All right, so we had our Top Gun last week. So by popular demand, next week we're going to have Mr. Wiggins join us to rehash some of the things he talked about at our Top Gun. So I think we all really appreciate John's time. I know I certainly did. I've known him for a couple decades, and so I've seen that man grow quite a bit. And so it's great to see his success, and I think he's a very wise man. That's going to be next week. This week we've got a wise young man here. So, I don't think Brennan needs much of an introduction, especially, all you guys know Brennan. Many of you have been in the field with Brennan and watched him grow from a leader to highest performing ICL. I think, Brennan, tell me if I'm wrong, 2023, $3.5 million ICL. Does that sound right?
I think we came in at 3.6 million was the final number.
Man, 3.6. I mean, you crushed it. And I think the month of December, you averaged $100,000 wires, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, all Q4 actually, which is crazy.
Huh. In quarter four, your average wire was 100 grand.
Just under, I think, like 99 and some change. Yep.
I mean, that's crazy. And I mean, it's not like you've got 50 reps in your office. I mean, you're averaging how many reps in your office?
So between like 35, 40 selling.
35 to 40, getting $100,000 wires. So you guys can do the math to be like, and I think you were saying something like the top 100 reps contest, all of your reps made the top 100.
Yeah. And unfortunately with staffing requirements, I couldn't take everybody. So the
Yeah.
the veterans that have been before had to stay behind and they had to hold down the fort while the new guys got to experience the trip.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome, Brennan. So I appreciate you, being on this, January call here. We're starting the year off. Everybody's ambitious. Everybody, I've always said, if I go golfing with Tiger Woods, and you got to see me golf a little bit at Pelican Hill, but I tell my son, I tell anybody, listen, if I golf with Tiger Woods on the first hole, it's a tie. I mean, he's not 18 strokes ahead of me. I mean, we're tied. So, could I par while he birdies? And now I'm only one stroke behind. Now by 18 holes, obviously it would be a complete annihilation. But hey, we're all starting the year off. We're all hitting the starting blocks really at the same spot. We all want to have a productive year. Many people are shooting for the $1 million club this year. I mean, we had 46 people hit it last year, and another record there. We're going to celebrate that at Keys to Success. But we just want to know what's on your mind. What are you focused on? How are you looking at 2024? So the baton is officially passed to you.
All right. Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you. I think when I turn the page like on a new year, I like to look macro, what's happening in the world, and then micro, because I think in order for me to kind of anticipate maybe what's going on in the world and creating like goals or game plans, I kind of want to try my best to anticipate what's going on in the world. So one of the things that we taught or I teach in the office that I think could be beneficial for you guys is you probably hear a lot about like interest rates and the Fed and their increasing interest rates and it doesn't really directly affect you in the moment. And I think sometimes if you don't really know much about that stuff, it kind of just flies over your head. But quite literally, an interest rate is the cost to borrow money. And the cost to borrow money has been going up and up and up and up and up. And we're in such a consumer based economy that's so much based on buying and selling that knowing the interest rate and how it could affect, the big picture macro, I think is important to understand in anticipating what could be happening this year. So, just I jotted down some numbers for this call, but like for instance, the difference between a 3, 6, and 9% interest rate, if you were to buy a $500,000 a year home, or not $500,000 a year, $500,000 home, on a 3% interest rate, your monthly payment would be 2,100. On a 6% interest rate, your monthly payment would be 3,000. And on a 9% interest rate, that home you would pay $4,000 a month for the exact same $500,000 house. Over the course of the maturity of a 30-year loan, that $500,000 house is 750,000 at a 3%. It's a million one at 6%, and it is 1.5 million at a 9%. So over the course, a $500,000 house at a 9% interest rate, if once you're done paying it all back, you're going to pay $1.5 million for a $500,000 house. So just understanding that concept alone is important, especially if you're going to be in the market to buy anything big and you need to borrow money. You should understand that. But from just a business standpoint, what does that mean? Higher rates to me means that consumers in the world are going to have less disposable income because more money is going to have to be spent in paying interest, whether that be credit card interest, auto loan, housing, whatever. There's just going to be less free flowing money that'll be out there. So when consumers have less disposable income, they're likely going to spend a little bit less money. And when people spend less money, businesses are going to have less profit. And when businesses have less profit, they're going to lay people off. And when people get laid off, they factor into the unemployment rate. And when people are unemployed, they're going to have less disposable income. And thus the cycle sort of continues. So as I'm looking at 2024, we're kind of seeing this, but I'm anticipating that the market might not be as great and there may be a lot more talent that's out there. And so, as I'm kind of just thinking through, what to anticipate, what to really double down and really focus on, I'm thinking that we're going to see higher unemployment. We're going to see a lot more talent out there, but we also sell products and services, and we may have consumers that are going to be a little bit more conservative with making purchases. So you kind of have like something good and something bad, and how are you going to navigate that whole thing? The bottom line is people want to spend, and price only matters in the absence of value. And so the thing that we're teaching and doubling down on is just with the sales reps, really focusing on just getting customers stopped, getting them engaged, getting them interested, the real front end of the law of averages. Because, especially in January right now, you may have consumers that are just coming off the holidays. We really want to double down from a sales standpoint on those skills. And then, on the other side, I am anticipating really great quality candidates, and that's what we're seeing right now. So really taking a deep dive into just like what we're doing from our ZipRecruiter, our Monster, our Indeed, and allocating more money there. And we're seeing that we're having even more resumes coming in. I mean, right now, this time last year, we were getting around 150 to 200 resumes a week. Right now, we're getting about 450 to 500 a week. So, you especially with a couple of recruiters, you're arming them with a bunch of, resumes. We're seeing some really unbelievable talent walk through the door. So I'm thinking just from not that this has ever not been important, but if there's really two skills I want to be excellent at this year, I want to be excellent at recruiting, like, and not just hiring any Joe Schmo, but like really landing big fish, guys that can be total game changers, that can come into your company, that can come into your culture, want an opportunity, and that are going to crush it. That's number one. Number two, want to find and get really good at our systems and sales training and teaching people to be excellent, because I think that a different level of skill may be required this year. So if we can have really high skill and really great talent, and we can marry those two things together, I think that's going to be the formula this year for maximizing, long lasting success. So my focus, I want to continue to stack as much cash as possible and build headcount so that when opportunities come, we can just start grabbing them. Grab. And, be able to, with a high headcount and cash in the bank, you're always ready to promote deals. You're always ready to put people in markets. And that's kind of the strategy that we're sort of looking for. And then, my goal is to continuously live below my means too. Last year was a really good year just personally. And I try to live a good life, but not, push myself to the absolute max. And I encourage my people and the guys that are around me to do the same. Just because, business has its ebbs and flows, good times and bad times. And you're never as good as you seem. You're never as bad as you seem. You're always somewhere right in the middle. And I think taking that sort of humble approach to 2024 is really kind of where I think our focus is at going into this year. So, when you asked me that question, that's kind of what immediately sort of popped into my mind, kind of just when I thought about this year, kind of what we're gearing towards, what I'm anticipating and what we're shooting for. Those are some of the macro, and then working it into more of the micro on how we can execute on a day-to-day. So those are my initial thoughts. I don't know if anyone has any follow-up or comments on that, but that's kind of where my mind is at the moment.
Well, I'm just curious, so this is dialogue you're having with leaders in your business. I mean, everybody in your business is hearing a message like that. And so obviously I'm thinking, gee, a 22-year-old, you're adding so much value. You're getting them thinking about, oh yeah, I do want to own a home one day. Not immediately now, but gee, that's good to know, Brennan. I didn't realize that these high interest rates are going to translate into, a payment of, $4,000 instead of $2,000 for that $500,000 home. do you see that like does somehow are the dots connected to high performance in the field with a message like that? Like how do you see that messaging translating to your leaders in the field?
Yeah, I'm just using it as something that's more of firepower. I generally don't want to leave the story up to the field. So I like to be the narrator of the story of what the guys focus on, right? So, especially in retail, right? We're coming off of, Q4 and you got Christmas and all that. And then, customers are spending money like crazy, stores are packed. And then it gets back to business as usual, which is what it normally is for 10 out of the 12 months out of the year. And for someone that is, like you said, a 22-year-old or a 23-year-old that maybe this is their first time in our business or kind of what we're doing, it can be really easy for them to come up with a story around this is more difficult, this is harder, or in other parts of the country, some of you guys, oh, it's snowing, it's below zero. There's a lot of excuses that can be made. And so my goal is to acknowledge it in a way that is backed by data, and I can walk through everyone the thought process on what's actually happening and what they're experiencing in the world, and then tying it into how we can maximize this, right? So, hey, there's going to be really good talent out there. You're not going to want to miss alpha. You're going to want to be taking out second round interviews and building your team because there's going to be a lot of really good people out there, right? So, kind of baiting the carrot there, carrot and stick in that, and then from the other side talking about, hey, customers are going to be maybe a little more conservative with their spending habits. So, we can sit there and, say, poor me, why me, or we can get really good at breaking through that, kind of box that customers put us in. They put us in that sales box. And if we can break through that, I mean, honestly, I would say 8 out of 10 customers that we talk to, as long as they gave us the time of day, we can help them out, whether that be upgrading a product, lowering down their bill, giving them a new service. The problem is that most of the time we just don't do a very good job of breaking through that sales box. And so customers maybe are like, hey, they're a little more conservative because they don't want to spend as much money. And the last thing they want to do is talk to a salesperson if they're not such a good financial position. But if you can be super assertive in the front part of the sale, the body language, eye contact, smile, timing, tonality, the systems of what we teach, and you can get somebody stopped and interacted, hell yeah, most people are going to do it once you can show them the value they're going to get. But if you're just kind of taking your haphazard sort of, nonchalant approach like you were taking during the holidays, you're going to get worked, this time of year. So, that way I'm walking through the story. I'm acknowledging kind of what they're experiencing, but at the same time, I'm not allowing it to be an excuse. And I can also narrate what's actually really actually happening in the world, to what, our advantage is going to be in that situation. Right. And so I think maybe that's something I got from playing baseball back in the day is like, no matter what situation you're in, there's an advantage to it. You just have to find the advantage. Whether you're down, you're up, you've had good games, bad games, there's advantages to every situation. One of the most common things I give to as advice to offices that are smaller is they go, oh, it's so much easier when you have all those guys in your office to do things, run things. And part of that is true. But one of the most difficult things of a big office is getting everybody on the same page. One of the easiest things to do when your headcount is 5, 6, 7, or 8 is get 8 people on the same page. You know how easy that is? Just make sure everyone's got has the same pitch, they overturn objections the same way, everyone's got the same system that they're following. There's a huge advantage to being small too. You just have to, it's all about where you're directing your energy and your focus. And so for me, with a 22-year-old or 23-year-old in my office, I'm not allowing them to figure out what to focus on. I'm directing their focus on what I want them focusing on, because then that becomes the story and what they pay attention to and what they energize. And that can actually be really empowering, especially when you get a whole team behind that message or believing the same thing. You go out and you're going to win. I just wish the Dolphins would do that. But instead, we took on it's too cold in Kansas City. We're a Florida team, and the Dolphins folded. But, I'd rather have my football team fold than my business fold, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe the Dolphins should bring you in to give some halftime pep talks or something like that, Brennan.
Maybe they would love to hear about interest rates. I think they would really, that'd get them going.
But that's great how you connect the dots. Plus, I mean, you're adding value. You're teaching young entrepreneurs how to. I mean, I'm just foreshadowing what they're going to look like, 10 years from now. These are going to be smart owners that you're developing here that, know how to buy their properties. And again, you started planting seeds very young. So I think there's really dual results that are going to come from you connecting the dots from macro down to the micro level. That's very smart.
Yeah, and for better or for worse, I just think our education system is really failing this generation. We did something a handful of weeks ago where we just said, hey, raise your hand if you know the difference between a debit and credit card. And about 50% of the hands went up saying they did know the difference. The other 50% had no clue what the difference between a debit and a credit card was. So sometimes, obviously none of us are financial gurus, but some of the things that we think that maybe we just take for granted that we think everybody knows, maybe take a step back and really just, really inspect what you expect. And you'll be shocked. All of us have a lot of value that we can add to this next generation in ways that you probably don't think are important or valuable, because you just assume everybody knows some basic concepts, and not everybody does. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I had a neighbor years ago who had a 30-year mortgage, but it was a 5-year ARM, 5-year adjustable rate mortgage. And she was under the impression that after 5 years, the house is paid off. And I'm like, no, that's not how it goes. I mean, add up those payments, that doesn't come anywhere close to the value of the house that you bought. Oh, I
Right.
didn't know that. Like, yeah, so yeah, we shouldn't take for granted what people know. I mean, it might seem elementary to some, but I love what you're doing. I think you're offering rich education, so kudos.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the goal is just to leave people better than how you found them, right? And to me, I kind of surrender the illusion of control. I don't know how long somebody's going to work with me. They may work with me for just an interview for 15 minutes, but my goal is to leave them better than how I found them. If it is working for me for a day, a week, a month, a year, I think of just having that as your operating principle and surrendering whether or not someone sticks with you for the whole run, or, a short run. If everyone can leave your business or your interactions with you and they feel like they're a better person than when they first started, I think that's the way to do it. And that's the way to do our business in the right way, where it's coming from a genuine place where people know that you care, and that you care obviously about your business, but you care about them too. And ideally those two things align. And then just being clear with expectations and what's expected. Right. And I think, as long as you let everyone know what the rules and regulations are, and this is what's to be expected, and as long as you stay within these bumpers, we're good. You'll do fine. It's just the wishy-washy gray areas, and kind of just having people go out and just sell every day, and that's all it is. You'll burn people out. So I look at the office, and that's why I like in person in office, because that's an opportunity to fill up everyone's bucket, and recharge everyone, get them thinking the right way, and then it's boom, time to go, sell and make some money. So yeah, that's what's worked and it's what's continued to work. And certainly going to be doubling down on that. And as long as you're feeding yourself, educating yourself, you always have stuff to give. And I think it's just a maintenance thing, right? The easiest way to, get in shape is to never get out of shape. So, for me, it's just the best way to continuously add value is to my people, is constantly be adding value to myself. And as long as I'm growing and I'm learning, I feel like I'll always have things to offer. Because if not, things slip and you lose touch.
Mm-hmm. Great. Any other questions, or Brennan, get Brennan to continue? You see that chat message, Brennan, or you want me to read it?
Oh, when are these conversations happening? Is this a leaders meeting? Yeah, it could be a leaders meeting or a morning meeting, depending on just the dynamic of your office and where you feel like your skill set is best used and kind of how you want it to operate. These are things that I'll talk about in a leaders meeting, I'll talk about in an alpha meeting, or even in a morning meeting. And sometimes it's good to talk about like unemployment and how competitive it is out there, especially in a morning meeting, because you'll have second rounds maybe that are watching and they're like, oh yeah, wow, there is a lot of competition out there. Like, yeah, there is, which is probably why you're not getting called back from as many places as you probably were hoping. So I sometimes will do that in a morning meeting too. I just think it's good to play offense and to really swing the bat, go hard, and get the messaging out the right way. But you got to take the time to think through these things yourself. This won't just come to you and you just show up and run a meeting. And so that's why, for me, I like to get into the office an hour and a half before the reps get in. That gives me all my time to go through my data, prepare, jot down notes, thoughts, ideas. Have an idea, explore it, research it, learn it a little bit. Come back to it. And I think, over the years, you'll start to create a playbook of meetings, ideas, thoughts, and you collect that long enough. In a lot of ways, I kind of look at it like being a teacher. My mom's a first grade school teacher, and she teaches the same stuff every single year, just to a totally different group of kids. And so for me, it's kind of just like compiling a bunch of, ideas, thoughts, meetings, and then storing them. And then just as the days go by, years go by, you start to compile a lot of your meetings and you flip through some stuff, and some of it's not relevant anymore because the business has changed so much. And then some of it is like, man, that's really good. And something that happened years ago maybe also be happening today in your business, and there's a lot of dots that you can connect. And I think as long as you show up prepared, you give it your all, and you leave your people better than how you found them, you're going to find people sticking around. And then just maintain high standards. So the guys are making great money, and people that are learning, earning, having fun, and you're providing opportunity are not going to go anywhere. To me, that is the formula that I've talked about now for quite a while. But think about it. Think about past jobs that you've had. You either weren't learning, every day was the same thing over and over again. You weren't earning or making the amount of money you wanted to be making. You weren't having any fun, or there was no opportunity, which is why you turned over and went to some other position. So, if I can have my guys make great money, they learn something every day, they're having a ton of fun, and there's real opportunity, they're not going anywhere. And then it just plays offense, and we can just stack and build, stack and build, stack and build. And that becomes kind of the approach.
I got a question, a little unrelated, but I figured, I had dinner with you and Justin Hageman on the boat. That was a real pleasure listening to two guys that both earned over $1 million last year on, how do you pay less taxes? I mean, what a great conversation that was, right? Um, and so I have talked to several owners that when you look at their recruiting, number of people hire, and then there's turnover. And I'm like, well, there are people like Justin and Brennan that they only hire about one person a week. And if I'm not mistaken, you hire like 0.8 people a week or something like that. It's just that your 0.8 ends up like they do well. They stick around, they get promoted to leadership. So I guess the question that's asked a lot, and I don't even really know how to answer because that's never really how I've ran my business. I've always played the law of averages. I don't know who's going to do well and who's not going to do well. I too have the same attitude of, leave people better than you found them. So add value to people. But how are you and Justin so sharp or accurate, might be a better word? How do you
Yeah.
know who's going to do well before they start?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's funny because the only way you can win with a zero point 0.8 weekly hiring rate is if you're adding zero point 0.8 but losing zero, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't work. If you lose one on average or lose two on average, it doesn't work. So it starts with you have to get the losing none per week part right. And that kind of is building on what I just talked about, which is the learn, earn, fun, and opportunity, right? If you can maximize those four things, it takes so much pressure off of the recruiting funnel because now it's about hand selecting guys that you really want to build, that you like, you enjoy working with, that motivate you, that excite you. And obviously, there's going to be weeks we have 4 new hires, but then there'll be 2 weeks where we go without a new hire. And I think that strategy maybe is more of a slow is fast approach, but that strategy was one of the only strategies that was winning during COVID, right? And the guys that needed 4, 5, 6 new hires a week with really high turnover got smoked during COVID. And so what ended up happening is I ended up getting more confidence and belief in what we were doing, because what you're able to do is maintain culture. When you have really high turnover, you start to dilute and ruin the culture. So one of the reasons, like if you look at college football, Alabama, I know Nick Saban just retired, but what does Alabama football do really well? They're really good at recruiting top talent. They're not just opening up their doors and go, "Hey, come on, everyone, come try out for Alabama football." And it ain't like that. You're hand selected to be a part of that team. And then, if you're a freshman on that team, you're getting taught the morals, values, and principles by the juniors and the seniors, the guys that have been there for a few years. And then those guys go off to the NFL or go off wherever they do. And then the whole thing just levels up by one. The freshmen become sophomores, sophomores become juniors, juniors become seniors. And if you maintain that culture, in theory, you really only got to build the culture once, because once it's built the right way, it'll get passed down by generation every single year to the next group of guys that comes in. But that won't happen if you're constantly turning over your leadership or you're always losing guys way too fast. So I think that thought process or approach has been super beneficial, because every ownership promo that we have, there's another line of leaders that take the baton from that guy getting promoted to that market, and now they assume that role, and then they're grooming that next gen. I'm grooming that next gen so that when they get promoted, it just gets passed down, so on and so forth. But the only way you can do that in this business if you're not turning people over. Alabama's roster is different every year, but the core players, there is a core that rolls over year over year over year. but the entire roster is very different from year to year. But there are similar players that, go from freshman to sophomore, sophomore to junior, junior to senior. And then the goal, right, is to have as many of those guys get to the NFL as possible, right? We want as many of those guys to get into running their own markets and become owners as possible. But you're gonna have some guys that can't make grades that are gonna get kicked off the team. You're gonna have some people halfway through it that say this is too much, I don't want to do it. Some people realize they don't want to do football anymore and they're gonna quit. There's gonna be natural turnover that happens, but I try to control the controllables, and by having high standards, showing up every day, adding value, right, creating a lot of events and having a bunch of fun, and providing opportunity, it gives me my best chance to minimize my turnover rate, which allows me to play with more of an indifferent energy in who we hire, right? But if you're losing two or you're losing three or four every week, there's a much bigger urgency just to replace and kind of fill that bucket. But then it becomes this like perpetual cycle of hire four, hire four, lose four, and you barely even know the people that work in your business because it's changing so much. So much interchange. So by having a lot of the same core guys, you're able to really build and maintain that culture, and I think that's one of the big secrets. Maybe from my playing career, maybe Justin, he would say the same thing from his playing career, but I try to take as much of what we do and attribute it to sports because I feel like there is quite a bit of correlation between the two.
That's a great explanation. I never looked at it that way. Like, get your turnover to zero. It takes all the pressure off recruiting. Like, I mean, that's such a great paradigm to start with.
For sure. And then you get the high performers really pushing to be the best so that the handful of interviews that come in, they're jousting and fighting for it, and having interviews for everybody kind of creates spoiled children in a sense. And obviously I want to deliver and come through and feed as many people as possible. But when everyone's hitting the interviewing metrics and they're, getting fed constantly with an opportunity, you could be rewarding the wrong thing. I do have reps that consistently hit the interviewing metrics, but they're not people I'm interested in building around, right? There's some things in their life they just got to level up in that they're just not great at. But they're sales dogs, and that's fine. It's just not. I'm not always trying to reward that, right? I want to build around my horses. So your best people end up sharp. Iron sharpens iron. Your best people end up pushing each other to be the best, and we'll see how it plays out in the long run, right? As we continue to build and promote, but for right now, it's sustaining a really high level of consistent performance, which is ultimately something I really value.
Awesome. Any questions from the group? Those are great answers, Brandon. Thank you so much.
Just principles.
I have a question for you, Brennan. You're coming out from a 3.6 million year. Good job. Obviously, you talk about this on stage. This year, are you having like a stretch goal? Hey, I want to do 5 million. Other than that, are you talking about this? If you're doing 5 million this year, are you talking about with your guys, say this is our goal? And what kind of books have you picked to start the year?
Yeah, it's a good question. And 5 million for sure is going to be our goal because that's about 100K average weekly wire, which we just demonstrated in quarter four we were capable of doing it. And as we move into Q1 now, obviously I know the productivity is going to go a little bit down. So how do we still get to that level? We got to get to that level by getting more bodies. So not surprisingly, we are focused a little bit more on aggressively hiring the front part of the year. We're at like 45 head count. My goal is to get into like the mid 50s or 60s and then start to promote from 50 plus head count is kind of the thought process. I'm not generally, maybe with my core team, I'll share those sort of goals, but that's not really going to be something that I'm like out loud talking about with the whole team. I'm going to get more process oriented on, hey, we got to get to 50 head count. We need to, get our cancel percentage below this level, our disconnect percentage below this level, whatever the campaign specific things are, and get our average dollar per rep to this level. My goal is for you guys to all be making $2,000 a week because I know if I got 55 guys in the books, all of them doing 2K a week, you can probably do the math on what that wire looks like. So with my core team, I'm going to be as transparent as I possibly can be with my core team. I want my core team to walk, talk, think, act like me. But for the rest of the office, sharing those goals isn't necessarily relevant, the big ones. But yeah, I would say it's going to be 5 million, 2 deals this year for sure. And maintaining high head count and winning at every level because ultimately if you can win $1 million club and promoting owner of the year, that's where you want to be, right? Because $1 million club, you're the winner of $1 million club, means your ICL is generating a ton of revenue, and then you got the promoting owner award as well, where you're providing opportunity, you're promoting deals, and you're going to get a big chunk of that promoting owner bonus. which this year I think is going to be close to $300,000. So that doesn't suck.
I mean, it's a fantastic business for guys like you. Like it's just so unbelievable to hear. I mean, that kind of success. Plus, you're taking a humble approach. I mean, I've seen the truck, you pick me up in your truck. I mean, you didn't pick me up in your Ferrari or anything like that. So you got a good head on your shoulders and you're being humble about everything, but you're doing so well, Brennan. Like, wow.
Yeah, and I don't I really do think that comes from playing sports growing up, just because, in baseball is a game that's played every single day. And you can be the hero and go 4 for 4 and hit 2 home runs and win the game, one game. And then 24 hours later, you can be the total donkey and you can be the reason the whole team lost. So I think, in our business, it's just so much about it. It's just the consistency and how you show up and coming through. And it's just the day in, day out grind, as you start to do this for years, right? It is a bit of a grind, but finding things that get you excited, creating goals, seeing people progress, and it has to be about other people. If you make it about yourself, it's just not nearly as fun. And the personal accolades are great, but nothing makes me happier than the young guy that has never had the job or really had a lot of experience, and they get that first like really big paycheck, and they're like, wow, this is so awesome. And getting people thinking differently and really making those positive impacts, or even traveling. I mean, this last trip to California, 2 people that I took on that trip, it was their first time on an airplane.
Hmm.
Like they come from really humble beginnings, and they just getting on an airplane, like making those sort of impacts in people's lives, I think is where you'll find a lot of value in what we do. And then it's incredibly financially rewarding too.
Love it.
Madi, I think there's a hand if we have one more.
Yeah, hey Brennan. Question for you. So now you're starting to find like a different level of success, I think, that most people haven't seen, but like what challenges kind of keep you up, right? What are your big focus points that are like, hey, I know how to run a successful business, or somewhat, maybe to your degree different, right? But a successful business, what are those kind of things that you're challenged with now? Like how are you trying to still challenge you and still grow year over year?
Yeah, so I would say, for me, the big challenge now is getting guys out and promoting guys that are not making the same mistakes that I made, and really playing the telephone game and teaching the business, right? And so as we start to get more deals out, the real dipstick of success is, can you replicate it? Can you have somebody else that you promote do what you're doing? And obviously, I don't know if it'll ever be to the degree that we're doing 100K wires. I mean, who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, that's what everybody's doing, and I hope the business is pushing in that direction. It may not be possible, but my goal is just the future, the current guys that I've promoted, plus the guys that my future guys that we're going to promote to ownership. The part of the game that's getting really tricky or fun is seeing how what I'm teaching, how it's translating or not translating at the next level. And so sometimes people in my office, you're teaching, talking about these things, everyone's nodding their head and writing notes. And I'm like, okay, good. Everyone's got it. They got it. And then it's when you get out on your own and you got to go do it, knowing it and doing it are two totally different things. And it's been fun to see how, the head nodding in the office to now doing it on your own, what that looks like. So I would say from a challenge standpoint, I would say that's probably been the most challenging. That's going to be my biggest like focus and thing that I'm trying to really get good at. But I think if you look at Sebastian's career too, you look at the first couple guys he promoted, they were good, but not like, oh my God, amazing. And then he learned a little bit from those first couple deals. And then that whole wave of like Carmen, me, Fareed, Evie, and that huge run that he went on came after he got those first couple deals out. So I think that's kind of the path, or maybe the trajectory that I think I'm trying to follow, or just, that would be the goal. But I've seen too many guys in our business are too quick to and rush a promotion just because they want to promote somebody and they want to, get the promoting owner bonus or whatever. And then they leave their cupboard very bare, and their business struggles for a long period of time before it ever actually recovers. So really my goal is to build really, really deep depth. So there's many layers of guys that we're working with, and then taking the time to develop those guys. And here's the thing, when the average rep pay is over $2,000, no one's in a rush to get to ownership, right? They're willing to like take their time to really learn the skills that our business requires. It's when guys are making $400 a week and they're like, I'm barely paying my rent. I can barely pay groceries. Like, I'm only sticking this out because ownership is supposed to make me a lot more money. That's when there's a lot more urgency to, your guys will press you to get to ownership. But if you can run a business that has high standards, guys are making good money, they're far more patient and willing to, stick out some of the little things so that they can really iron out those skills so that at the next level, they're just going to be champions. And then there's not as much of a law of averages to promoting. It's more just like everybody that gets promoted does well because they were developed properly. So I would say that's kind of the focus and the challenge that I would say. But the other parts that are challenging is my tolerance for just little things like having conversations with the new guy around time management. Those ones I don't really do as much anymore. Some of the like little tiny, frustrating parts of running the ICL, I've had to get really good at delegating because my patience for some of that stuff is just really thin. And that would be maybe the byproduct of maybe this level of success now, like you said, is just sometimes those little things. It's just like, gosh, I just don't want to work with kids. I want to work with people that are hungry, ambitious, that have the basics down, and then I can build on the basics. I don't want to have to teach the basics like showing up on time and, putting on a suit every day and the importance of that. So maybe my thoughts around that.
Great. Don't dump too much of that on Colleen now.
No, definitely not. No. She takes on way more than she needs to already. So
Right.
can't have her having time management conversations.
Right. I'm with you. All right. Well, you've taught us a lot, Brennan. I've said this a couple times last year. We appreciate you. You're the white rabbit. We're all chasing you. To hear that you're setting your goal on hitting $5 million as an ICL and replicating that, like, it's going to be very interesting to see how this, plays out for you and your crew, and just keep it up, man. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I'm excited because this year was the first year I think Sigcor had $50 million club owners, which was more than
46.
double last year. How much was it?
46.
46. Yeah. So, and I think that's double what it was last year. And so, it's kind of cool to see like a rising tide lifts all ships. It's not just, one guy doing well. It's, we had two other owners in the $2 million club, which has never happened before. So the business as a whole is all moving in the right direction, and certainly excited to be on the forefront of that. But, we got to get as many people over that 20K mark on a weekly wire. That has to be the minimum standard. Everyone at least 20K, 30K. That's when your life will really start to change, is when you start getting over those 20, 30, 40K wires. That's when things start to really change. So it's possible. There's a ton of people doing it, a bunch of guys doing it. So, just learn from it and, just be a real student of the game. I think that maybe my one superpower is every breakout, every NatCon, every promoting owner event, I'm just trying to extract little bits of information that I can put into my game. I don't take things, verbatim. I don't take little things. John Wiggins last week said, you got to visit your outside deals every 6 weeks. And I was like, okay, visit your outside deals. That's what I took from that. Like, you got to make sure you visit your deals every 6 weeks. I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think that's as practical as it needed to be. But just, take little things, take little principles, learn. And there's so much great information in our business from guys that are, have long-standing track records and also have the hot hand that are doing it right now. Try to get advice from the guys that are winning currently and the guys that have won for decades. And I think if you can do that, put that into your game and show up every day consistently and execute, you'll be set up pretty well.
Yeah, it's awesome. At some point in time, I won't do it now, but I had lunch with Gary Polson yesterday, and he's already got the seed in his mind of what this $1 million bonus is going to look like. And Jamie, what do you think about doing it this way? So this conversation's happening again, to your point, 46 owners hit the $1 million club. The year before it was 22. So we more than doubled, the $1 million, mark. So yeah, future does look bright. Keep it up, Brennan. And, you're going to have somebody on this call catch you one of these minutes. So records are meant to be broken, you guys. So let's catch Brennan here.
Agreed.
All right. Thanks, guys.